Good afternoon and welcome to today's GCSAA webinar, a must-have, Written Best Management Practices Plans for Golf Facilities with Bryan Unruh, Ph.D. My name is Lisa Wick. I'm the Senior Manager of E-Learning Programs here at GCSAA and will serve as today's moderator. Before I turn things over to Bryan, I want to just go over a couple of quick housekeeping notes. We are recording today's event, and that recording will be, sorry, we should have gone forward and back. That recording will be available as part of your follow-up email afterwards. We do have handouts today as well, and those are available from the GoToWebinar control panel. If your panel has minimized, there's an orange rectangle. Click on that and you'll be able to open that back up to download those handouts. Type in questions to the question answer box or hit the raise hand icon and we can unmute you as your microphone or telephone is muted in this system. Bryan Unruh, Ph.D., is a professor of environmental horticulture at the University of Florida, IFAS West Florida Research and Education Center. He earned his bachelor's and master's degrees at Kansas State University and his Ph.D. at Iowa State University. Unruh's integrated turfgrass science research and extension program focuses on water quality and quantity, pest management, and new cultivar development. Results from his team's work are included in all 3 Florida turf industry best management practice manuals. His research improves quality of life by providing aesthetically pleasing green space and safe places in which to recreate. Please join me in welcoming today's presenter, Bryan Unruh, Ph.D. Bryan.
All right, thank you, Lisa. We've got to work on that intro and shorten that thing up a bit. But let me, as Lisa said, I am a professor at the University of Florida, and I've had just the great privilege really to work with GCSA really since about, I guess, 2015 or so, 2015, where we really embarked on this process of developing a BMP planning guide and template for the golf industry, and it's exciting to see the progress that has been made with that. And so our first kind of rollout was developing the national planning guide and tool and getting all 50 states on board. And so that train has left the station. We have a lot of states. I think I just saw through a tweet the other day that our second state is now online with BMPs, and so that's just been, like I said, it's been a great lot of fun. This last February, last month, we rolled out the facility level tool for GCSAA in developing really BMPs really coming down to the facility level. And so we've given a webinar on that. There's a recording that'll be coming forth that was done at GIS pertaining to the facility level adoption. And that's our ultimate goal, is for all golf courses in the nation to really have a very site-specific, facility-specific BMP plan in place. And so for our next hour or so here today, really going to want to unpack that and why facility tool is needed, why BMPs are needed at the facility level. And so as we jump in, I think a key question that we really have to ask ourselves is this: our golf course is good for the environment. And I suspect, if I look here, we have 31 folks in attendance on this webinar, and those that will watch this in the future, I would suspect that we would answer that question in the affirmative, that they are good for the environment. And we could probably come up with a litany of reasons as to why they are good for the environment. And I think if we were to, let's ask Google. What does Google say? As far as this question. And so I Googled that. Our golf course is good for the environment. And we looked down through some of these various hits. There were 4,160,000 results. Golf courses, friend or foe. Golf courses benefit people and wildlife. Golf and the environment, Audubon International. Oh, good news for the environment. And then golf courses are our planet's environmental sanctuary. And so, I guess if we just took these, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 or so, 6 or 7, we're running about a 50-50 answer on this. 50% of the folks, or at least on Google, are telling us that they're good for the environment, and about half of them are not so good for the environment. So we look at these, and we could take some of the talking points that we tend to use in the industry. And these are some talking points that for a GCSAA presentation that was given, and it says, golf courses, well-managed golf course provides substantial ecological and community benefits. We often say healthy turf grass is an excellent filter for, that traps pollutants. I am quoted as saying, there's the Brita water filters. Brita makes better water. Well, I think turf grass makes better water. Golf courses serve as catch basins, for the effective disposal sites for effluent wastewater. Many of our golf courses, most of our golf courses in the country now, are running some type of effluent water, treated water on their facility. Golf courses, the turf and the trees that are on golf courses produce vast amounts of oxygen, and oxygen's a good thing, keeps us alive. Key sanctuaries and habitat for wildlife, and so we see these types of talking points, and we use those talking points as golf course superintendents or university turfgrass scientists, but realize that oftentimes we use these in a sense we're kind of preaching to the choir, because we see some things out here, and go back to that article, why the decline of golf is good news for the environment. And this type of information is out there, and it's not necessarily overly helpful. While the sad news for owners of golf courses, enthusiasts of wearing silly pants, this is potentially positive news for the environment. And this, of course, is with the downturn in the economy several years ago, we saw a number of facilities closing across the country. And then we see, here's another one. This one is coming out of California, and instead of killing lawns, we should be banning golf. Of course, we know in California, a part of the country where just dramatic water shortages are going on, and we see here golf courses are a huge problem, says Adam Keats of the Center for Biological Diversity and Advocacy Group. And part of that, the huge problem, people who play it, they're a wealthy elite that have no connection to want or lack. Golfers live in a world of excess. I'll tell you what, I'm not sure I agree with that at all. Of course, we do have facilities that do cater to folks that tend to live a lifestyle different than I do, but we also see, especially with the junior golf programs and that are out there, that a lot of folks aren't living in a world of excess that are playing golf. And so these kinds of things are out there. And these types of counterpoint oftentimes get lost in the messaging, and can create some real challenges for us in the golf course management industry. Well, so we have to ask that question, why should golf BMPs be developed? And this slide really here speaks to the fact that BMPs and best management practice, in many states, there is actually a codified definition of best management practice. So it's in the statutes. And, Florida, for example, there is a statute, in the law that defines what a best management practice is. And it is generally, BMPs are really designed to drive water quality improvement. And BMPs are a shared language that the regulatory agencies and conservationists and engineers, all of these folks, they get it. They understand that shared language. And BMPs are recognized in federal and state TMDL policy, and that's total maximum daily load. And I'll wrap back around and define that a little bit more as we progress here this afternoon. But So BMPs are recognized in the federal and state policy. The legislative language is there, again, is a major component of water quality improvement plans. And as such, because it is recognized within the regulatory environment that we operate within, and it's important that the turf industry, and in particular the golf industry, be very proactive in developing, implementing the BMPs. And that's why GCSAA undertook this endeavor, really to develop tools to help the golf course management industry to embrace this whole BMP concept. And so far, so good. As I said, in February of 2017, I rolled out the national BMP tool, and this golf course BMP, this map here shows really where we are, with the goal, as I said earlier, is for all 50 states to have BMPs in place by 2020. You can see on this map that we're well on our way. And so Maryland was the first state to really come online with the BMP in the new tool. And we have many other states that are making significant progress towards having a BMP in place. Now, those light colored, the 9 states that you see there, for example, Florida and the Carolinas, they had a BMP document in place, but it was in advance of the tool that GCSAA developed. And so ultimate goal is for all states to have their BMP guiding documents in the web tool that was created by GCSAA, with content developed by my colleagues and myself at the University of Florida. So as you can see, we're well on our way. It's exciting to hear, and I get lots of communication every week about where folks are at in this process of developing a tool. And if you're on the conference call today or on the webinar today, and you're not aware of your state working on this, I would challenge you to check with your state leadership team in the chapter and see, are we working on these? And the GCSA field staff are the ones that really kind of help bring this map to keep it up to date. And so the field staff across the country are really kind of keeping a pulse. And and if you are on this webinar and you're not involved but want to be involved, I'd encourage you to again reach out to either the GCSA field staff or your state leadership within your chapters to say, hey, I want to get involved and help where I can. Again, with the ultimate goal of getting all 50 to have a BMP document in place by 2020. And that is critical because the fact that this facility level tool that we're discussing here today it's really predicated on having the state BMP document in place. And so as we move forward here, so it's one thing to have a book on the shelf or even a book in the web tool, so to speak. It's a whole nother thing to adjust your management practices. And that's something we've been learning in Florida and really studying from the standpoint of, Florida is the only state in the country with a certification program where our superintendents come and sit through a day of education and then take a certification exam so that they're credentialed as being, BMP certified. And so we've seen that it's been a very successful program, but we also are questioning, just because we have this certification program in place and just because we have the book, is it sitting on the shelf, or are our superintendents really embracing the concepts and the principles that are contained in these BMP documents? And so we're actually addressing that through a research perspective. And I have a former superintendent turned research coordinator turned graduate student all at the same time, working on really trying to identify those barriers to adoption and the level of adoption that's out there. And so again, let me kind of from a 50,000 foot approach, just kind of to recap. So in 2017, we rolled out the state level tool. All 50 states trying to get BMP documents in place by the year 2020. Once the state has a BMP document in place and it is in the tool, you as an individual superintendent of a golf course facility would log in through the GCSAA website, go through the portal, and you would then say, I want to create a facility level BMP document. And there's another webinar that we've done. It's on the GCSA website that you can go and talk, where I really get into the nuts and bolts of developing your facility level tool. And so just briefly, you would take your state document and you clone that in the tool, and then you can go in and you can add your own pictures, you can add your own cover to it, you can get your staff sitting around the table, maybe your greens committee folks, your general manager, whoever is deemed necessary to help you bring about a facility level BMP, a document that is the guiding principles of what you do day in and day out on that facility. Encourage you then as well to go into the individual sections and tailor those to meet your needs. And that's really kind of where we're going to go the rest of our time together this afternoon, and just look at a few of these particular sections and why we think these things are so critically important. And it really kind of, it does come down to planning. And there's this quote I like, failing to plan is planning to fail. Now, the flip side of that argument as well, and we honestly tend to do maybe a little too much of this at the university level. We sit around planning everything and never get anything done. And so there's that real balance between putting the plan into place and then implementing that plan. And it's critically important because, planning helps us identify those goals. And if we don't have a plan in place, if we don't know what those, goals are, then how are we ever going to know if we get there? Planning offers some directions for us. And so if we think about it from the standpoint of, if we can identify through developing a facility level BMP, we're not going quite in the direction we need to go. We're doing some things at the facility that would not be deemed as best management practices, for example, in dealing with, conserving our pollinators, for example. And so these BMP, facility level BMP, allows us to really provide some direction for the facility. It uncovers some problems as well. Just as I said, maybe there's some practices we're doing out there. Maybe it's some construction. Our golf course is old, for example. Maybe we know that some of the catch basins and the drains are connected to some water bodies that maybe we need to make sure they're not connected to. And so those types of things as well. I think it adds a level of professionalism as well. And that really is key. When we can go before, our local elected officials, our local regulatory folks, and we go in a very proactive manner and say, here's the document that guides our daily operations. We just look good. And then it gives perspective as well. And so, how are we doing in comparison to, maybe the facility down the street or the facility in, over in another state. And so I think, again, it's critically important to plan and as we bring some of these BMPs into place. And so as we look at this is the GCSA BMP planning guide and template. If you were to go to the gcsaa.org and click on the BMP section and drill down to the BMPs, there is a print copy of the National BMP Planning Guide and Template, and that's what it would look like there as well. And so we can see these, you can print this hard copy out. Now, as I said a moment ago, a key part of this is for your state, whatever state you reside in, to have a BMP guide in place in the tool. Again, right now, we only have 2 states out of 50 that have a BMP in the GCSA BMP tool. Now, we have many of them that are in the works. And so once the state has an individual state has their BMP in the web tool, then you can go in at the facility level and start working on a facility tool. In the meantime, don't set this aside and forget about it. Let me encourage you to go to the GCSAA website and drill down again under the environment, and then down at the list of items here, we have the BMP Planning Guide. If you click on that, you will see this text pull up here, BMP Planning Guide and Template. And you'll notice down here at the bottom, it says download the BMP Planning Guide and Template. And so this is the hard copy of the national tool. Now realize the national tool is about 5 miles wide and only about a mile deep. Whereas in your state BMP may drill down to become about a mile wide and 5 miles deep, so to speak. And so as we develop the content for the national guide, realizing that the laws, there was no way that the writing team could go in and really look into every state, into every municipality, and identify what are those rules and regulations and laws. And so that's why we provide some guidance on the national, where we encourage those states to drill down and find those specific items that are key to the state that you're in. There may be, as you start developing a facility level tool, there may be some local regulations, some local home rule kinds of things that you need to put into your tool, and you've got complete edit capability, as I'll show you really as we progress. And so if you as you log into the GCSAA website, you click into that environment and come down to the best management practices section, and you'll log in. When you log into this, if your state has a BMP in place and you wish to go in and develop a facility level tool, this is kind of what you would see there. You're going to see a welcome and a how-to guide. You'll see selecting the various BMP categories, and then complete the BMP manual cover, introduction, and references. And so this is all there, and you'll start working through these various sections. I'm not going to get into this too deep, because that's what the prior webinar does, is it unpacks each of these sections into much greater detail. But again, just generally speaking, the welcome and how-to guide is just a bit of a guidance, to get you through this process, and then the various BMP categories. Let's click onto this, and so here are the BMP categories. If we notice here, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 different categories. If you were to go into this for the first time, you would see all 12 of them would be on the left column here under the not started column. And then as you start to work on these various sections, you see they will then land over here in the in progress center column. And then as you bring these individual categories to fruition, then they would show up over here under the complete section. So your ultimate goal is to get all 12 of these from the left over to the right side. And once that is done, then you can click on the publish side of things, and you then have a document that can guide your operation as well. Let me just pause here and ask if there are any questions. Of course, Lisa, you may want to provide a brief instruction again as to how they can ask that question through the tool.
Absolutely, sir. You can click on the raise hand icon, and I can unmute you, or you can ask a question directly, or you can type into the question answer box on your control panel. If that control panel is minimized, you'll see an orange rectangle at the top. A question here would be, I see in the in progress that there's a due date that is passed. Would the system notify me of that?
All right. The system does not have notifications built into it at this point. Those due dates are, Ron Wright, the field representative for really the Southeast U.S. when he was a superintendent at the Mobile Country Club of Mobile, he used to always say, Doc, he said, the first 2 letters of done or due. And that has stuck with me all these years. And for me to get things done, I have to have due dates. And so we put some of those due dates in there. And again, they are just to kind of give you that prompt, or that says, hey, you better get some of these things done. But those are just kind of your own, your mental, but there's not at the present time, this thing doesn't send you all kinds of nasty grams saying, hey, you're behind schedule. Although I wish it would.
Some of us need those kind of little reminders. As superintendents, can we request access even if our state doesn't have a BMP yet?
Okay, good question. And so the answer to that is no. And so that's where, going back a couple slides, where I encourage you to pull the National Planning Guide down in the print edition and take a look at that, just to become familiar with that process. And again, that decision was made really, again, with kind of the end goal of getting all the states to really focus their energy on getting the state BMP in place, and then focus on the facility level tool. Honestly, it's going to save you a tremendous amount of work, because if you got in and started working on this this document for your individual facility, and then when the state tool came down, you would find that you would be, maybe in some ways, you would not be working off of really state pertinent information. Hopefully your state leadership team is really digging in and saying, okay, we want to make sure we cover these things and these things and these things. And again, it's a consensus of a lot of people working together, and so there may be some folks that are going to come up with things that you didn't think about. And so you would probably expend a lot of energy only to be disappointed once your state document came down the line.
And it's true that the states have a lot of different variants in their regulations, right?
It's huge. We look at, when we tend to point out states like New York and Florida and California that, just tend to have quite burdensome regulations, but there are other states that are just quite different. One of the things that has impressed me, and we'll talk about some water quality challenges here in a minute, some states are miles ahead of other states as it relates to complying with the Federal Clean Water Act. And other states are they're just terribly behind, and some are way out ahead. And we go up to to, let's say, the Pacific Northwest, and you have salmon bearing streams, and so that information has to be added. Whereas in Florida, we don't have a whole lot of salmon here in Florida. And so when you bring those, kind of two together, it's very critical that the states really get in and focus on those guiding principles, those principles that need to guide golf course management in whatever state you happen to reside in. Other questions?
That's all at this time, sir.
All right. So here in a few weeks, a bunch of folks, maybe some of you here on the webinar, will be traveling to Washington, D.C. and for We Are Golf, and an opportunity to walk the halls of Congress. And one of the big, talking points are BMPs. And the fact that the Golf Course Superintendents Association of America and the golf industry as a whole has really stepped out. And I don't know really of any other agricultural industry that has been as forward thinking as GCSAA has been in developing something such as this. And so it bodes well for the golf industry to be taking such a proactive a stance on developing BMPs. Well, let's proceed. And so I want to just kind of walk through and maybe provide some examples as to how these pieces of BMPs, these 12 categories, kind of work, and show a little bit of verbiage in there. And so the first two here that we'll highlight are surface water management and water quality monitoring and management. Well, we look at that, and as I said in kind of some of the introductory or the opening slides, BMPs are really driving, that they're the shared language that drives water quality improvement. Now we look at this and we have surface water management and water quality monitoring. We have nutrients, which can be directly linked. We have IPM, pesticide management, pollinator protection, energy. Well, a number of these particular categories of BMPs don't really relate to water quality. And so that is one of the things that, as we put these BMPs together, is that, again, from a regulatory standpoint, most BMPs deal with water quality, but this is a much, much broader approach to best management practices. And so where we're incorporating things like energy and pollinator protection, things that are just, really, they don't have a whole lot to do with water quality, but yet they're key functions that we need to be mindful of as we manage our facilities. And so let's look at a few of these. And so surface water management and water quality management, I think it's important to note, and focus on this water quality side of things. The concerns about water quality are related to point and non-point source pollution. And so you see the little picture of the image on the left there, and you see it. This is an example of a point source pollution. And so you got a pipe, you can point to it, you can say, ooh, we got some nasty water coming out of that pipe and it's polluting our water. A lot of this type of pollution has really been addressed across our nation. It's this non-point source pollution. So just as water moves across the surface of the earth and it picks up just contaminants, whether they're the drips, oil and fuel or whatnot that comes from your vehicle, all the way to fertilizers being applied on your golf course. And so as water moves across the surface, it picks up some of these pollutants and then it moves it into water bodies. And so I show this picture. This is go downstate in Florida with me a little bit. This is in the Vero Beach, Florida area. So we're just kind of down on the east coast, about a little more than halfway down the state, where Kennedy Space Center and all that is. And what we see here, this is the Indian River Lagoon, and we see this water body here, and this is a map showing nitrogen parts per million. And so the blue or the cooler colors are low nitrogen in the water, and then the red and warmer colors are high levels of nitrogen in the water. And all these are little finger canals that run. And so you can see over here on the left side of this map, you can see all the houses and these canals where the water quality has been deteriorated. But if we follow this little line up here on this map, you see we kind of get hot, so we have some nitrogen in the water. And we come all the way up here to these edges, and you see these two fingers sticking up in here. That water's pretty clean. And we know over on this aerial map that the water in those canals is being impacted by the management practices on this golf course. And so the good news is that it appears that the water quality coming off of the golf course is good. And so we go back to that key question: are golf courses good for the environment? And in fact, the Ocean Research Group, some press that they gave the golf industry, they gave them kudos and said, obviously the best management practices that were being implemented here at the golf course are having a positive impact. And so that's a good thing. Then we go down to, let's just go across the state in Florida over to the Naples area, and we have this Gordon River Greenway, and just a nature preserve that's in Naples, Florida. And if we look at an EPA water body search, we see here the Gordon River extension is impaired. And so the status of that water body is impaired. And so we ask the question, well, why? What is this impairment from? And, let's pull the plane up a little bit. And so here we see the Gordon River Greenway, and it's right next door to a golf course. And so we look at this, and the general public's going to look at that and say, well, the reason that Gordon River Greenway is polluted is because of this golf course. Now, there may not be a shred of evidence to support that. There might be. And this is one of the things why that surface water monitoring programs, a BMP, really needs to be implemented on this golf course so that they are monitoring their water, the nutrients in their water bodies, so that they can provide evidence, should the need arise, that says, golf course, you're polluting the Gordon River waterway. Well, if they can go out here and say, well, we're following the best management practices. Oh, and here is, 10 years worth of water quality data that we've been taking from our ponds, which shows the values of nutrients, nitrogen, phosphorus in our ponds is, 1/10 of what it is over here, then the golf course cannot, would not be implicated in being the problem. We can show evidence. And so a best management practice in this case would be to, pull water samples from this golf course, these water bodies on a very frequent basis, just to provide that database showing some of these. Well, let's go up the road a bit. Head up north. This is Portland, Maine, I believe. And we see here that Portland's tough new ban on synthetic pesticides allows few exceptions. Well, what are those exceptions? Hadlock Field, Riverside Golf Course, and 5 athletic fields will be the only exempt properties when the ordinances take effect July 19th. But we sit here, and if you were to read down through this article, which Lisa's put into that document, this person here, she is still concerned that this city exempted its golf course, which is located in the river watershed. She is also concerned that high-use athletic fields will continue to be exempt. Exemptions for invasive insects are also common. Wetland protectors will closely monitor the implementation of this ordinance. Camilla said, we also hope the council will come back later and restrict synthetic fertilizer use and restrict the sale of synthetic pesticides and fertilizers. And so we have somebody here that's not quite so favorable. But if the BMP on this golf course is in place and they can provide evidence based on the water quality samples that they say that they should do and have been doing, then they can provide some evidence that they don't need to, or they can maintain this exemption as well. Not all information is bad. This is a Science News report, Health of Ecosystems on U.S. Golf Courses Better Than Predicted, Researchers Find. And so University of Missouri, Columbia. So again, there seems to be kind of this mismatch of information out there as to whether golf courses are good or golf courses aren't so good. And it's incumbent upon us, you as golf course superintendents, to do the due diligence, to put the BMPs in place, and then to follow those BMPs that you have prescribed for yourself, again, just to provide documentation and evidence that you are managing that facility in an environmentally sound and responsible manner. And so again, we go back to this water quality challenges. We said that this non-point source pollution, it occurs as rainfall moves across and picks up these various these contaminants or these pollutants and then moves them into the water. Again, in most states, this non-point source pollution is the leading cause of water quality problems. We get into a lot more detail on this. Lisa has included in your handout section that GCM 2017 article where I really dig into the kind of to the meat of BMPs and to the water quality issues that are out there. And so just some excellent background information on why these BMPs are so important. We unpack that a little bit, and I think it is important to reiterate, and I've alluded to this. I talked about the 1972 Clean Water Act that was passed by Congress and signed by President Nixon. There's this little section in there, 303D, that requires states to establish these TMDLs. And a TMDL is simply a budget, and so we're all used to budgets and numbers in and numbers out kind of equals the bottom line. And so a TMDL is a pollution budget, realizing that pollutants come, pollutants go, water comes, water goes, and ultimately what is the a level of pollution that is being contributed. And what has happened is the states are mandated by this Clean Water Act to go in and do a water quality assessment. So every state and nation has a monitoring summer results supposed to be updated every 2 years according to federal law. You can see here Florida is woefully behind, but it shows here the impaired waters and the threatened waters. And so, again, you can pull this up for your specific state. And I'm going to show you a link here in a second that you can scan. Have your phone ready. If you have a smartphone, be prepared to have it. We'll show a screen, and you can actually take a picture of a QR code here in a second. That'll allow you to see very specifically what the water quality is right there where you're sitting. But we can see here in Florida that most of the waters in Florida are impaired, and so then these TMDLs have to be developed, these budgets, and the bottom line is they have to figure out how to improve the water quality. And so here's a map of Florida up here, and then we see Texas and then a couple other states as well. And so you can see, green means good here in Massachusetts. Red means not so good. You see an awful lot of red across the state. Come back up here to Florida. Anywhere that you see this purple coloration, it means that there's a TMDL in place. And all that means that there's then a level of regulation that is going to be imposed on those people who are living and working in the watershed. And so they go in and they do an assessment. They try to understand why is it that the water is impaired. And so, for example, in Florida, we have a lot of septic tanks. And so in a lot of places in Florida, we know that these antiquated septic tanks are contributing a significant amount of pollution to the waterways. And so, again, each state is asked to go in and identify what are those pollutants, and then they have to put together a plan to address those pollutants. And some of those plans then can include some pretty onerous regulations depending on where you are. BMPs, again, are that shared language that drives water quality improvement. And so in most states across the nation, having a proactive BMP in place saying we're going to manage our facility in an environmentally responsible way goes a long way with our regulators in bringing about some positive change. Here is that QR code I was telling you about. Take your phone out right quick. Some phones just use your photograph button and it will automatically, I know my iPhone, if you just click this QR code here, it will pop up and you can scan that, and it literally will take you to that EPA website, How's My Waterway, and literally right there you can zoom in and out and determine what is the level of impairment or the quality of the water in and around my facility. So if you're setting in your maintenance facility and there's a stream or a river that goes, just to the north of you, this thing will show you, assuming that river, that water body has been sampled. It's really cool and a quick way to be able to assess what's going on. I might point out here as well, if you don't do this, there are people that are doing this. I have found that there are, especially in Florida with our number of retired folks that we have down here that tend to have a lot of time on their hands, there's folks just, searching the internet and looking for, really to be candid, looking for ways to cause some trouble. And people get really, really sensitive about, impaired waters and so oftentimes then they go and say, well, the Gordon River Greenway, why is that river contaminated? And they look and say, well, it must be that golf course. And so then they go off on a bandwagon trying to get, all kinds of rules and stuff put into place to limit, the activities on that golf course. One of the things I find absolutely ironic in the state of Florida is that we have a lot of folks who enjoy playing golf every day of the week. By morning or by afternoon are the same folks who are doing some things, are participating in some actions that are trying to squelch what we're trying to do on the golf course. And so I don't think a lot of times it computes in a lot of folks' mind. So we see this, how's my waterway doing? We'll go back into just a screenshot of the BMP on the surface water management, and we see here, so we got regulatory considerations, we have site analysis, and then this section, Water Quality Sampling Program. And what you see here, these are the BMPs. And so establish dissolved oxygen thresholds to prevent fish kills. For example, use artificial aeration. And so these are just BMPs. Reduce stress on fish. Keep the dissolved oxygen levels above 3 parts per million. So these are just kind of statements. These are best management practices. These are targets. These are goals to help you, create some boundaries or at least some benchmarks out there. And so we see some of these sample parameters, collection and analysis, and so some guiding principles and of how to go about doing water quality sampling. How often should you do it? When should you do it? Those types of things. So again, this is back into the web portal. What you see here, these are the BMPs. This is the verbiage that is in the BMP tool. You have complete, notice up here, just like a word processor, you have complete ability or will have complete ability to edit, to change, to add pictures, to, whatever you want. Maybe you don't have a drop of water on your facility other than irrigation water, and you don't have any lakes, you don't have any streams for miles. So maybe this section is not important. And so this little icon's not real clear in the resolution here, but that's an eyeball, and you literally could click on that eyeball and it would put an X across it, and this verbiage will never show up in your BMP document. So it's a really robust tool to help you develop some BMPs for your facility. All right, so move on. So let's click on another one. So we'll go over here to irrigation. So we've talked about water quality. Water quantity, I think, is really kind of the Achilles heel for the landscape and turf and green industry as a whole. We know that our water resources are limited, our population is growing, and so irrigation can be a real challenge. Now, a GCSAA study revealed that golf courses used about 22% less water in 2013 compared with 2005. That's excellent news. But we also know that we see, back up one, getting carried away. We also know that, let's go out to California where we know it's very dry, and we see some things like this. And so annual water use of non-agricultural California business and industries, notice golf courses is at the top of the list. And so it's pretty hard to miss when you're at the top of the list. And we see here, water, one Palm Springs golf course for 1 day is 800,000 gallons. Make 1 day of snow at Lake Tahoe Ski Resort, takes about half of that. Fill an average LA swimming pool, 18,000 gallons. Supply a single family home for a day, 361. But we all need to take showers, we all need to drink water, and so there's a lot of folks saying, wow, 361 versus 800,000 gallons. So this type of information gets out there, and it's pretty hard to argue some of those facts as well. And so we go back to the BMPs, and we have a whole section of BMPs related to irrigation. So there's regulatory considerations. Let me point out that regulatory consideration, 9 of the 12 BMP categories have regulatory considerations, and it's listed in red there, and that's very important. And so the states, we're asking states to look at those state laws that are going to dictate or drive some of the BMPs, but then you may have municipal ordinances or township level ordinances that you would want to come back and add that into your content. But irrigation system quality, turf drought response, so all kinds of BMPs related to irrigation are included in this. Nutrient management, key section within the BMP as well. A lot of our, going back to the water quality thing, nitrogen and phosphorus are 2 key nutrients that are really under great scrutiny. And so there's a whole section in here on regulatory considerations and soil testing and plant tissue analysis and the various fertilizers that are used in the golf course management industry. This section is quite unique of all of the 12 sections within the BMPs. It's much more narrative. and getting into some nuts and bolts. In part because it's an education tool, so that as you maybe print this document off and give it to your greens committee, they can learn a little bit about the nutrient management side. One of the things we encourage you to do in this nutrient management section is to pull from your land-grant university. And so this is at the University of Florida, Dr. Travis Shaddix. He was one of the key faculty members that worked on this tool. And so he's got a publication here on the University of Florida website, Soil Testing and Interpretation for Florida Turf Grasses. So here is the document that is online. But notice here that we literally incorporated this document right into the BMP tool. And so this was a PDF document, simply saved it as a graphics file, and then plunked it right into the actual BMP. So that when you go to print this document out as a PDF, this University of Florida publication is incorporated right in the middle of your BMP as well. Well, I mentioned a couple of these sections, for example, energy and pollinators, that are pretty big issues out there in the golf industry now. Pollinator protection is getting a lot of press, a lot of concern out there as it relates to pollinators, and this is one area where golf courses have been deemed as pretty good partners in the environment. And so you can see parks and golf courses here, monarchwatch.org, and create habitats for monarch butterflies and pollinators on golf courses. There is a webinar that has been put together by Chip Taylor, who's the director of the Monarch Watch out of the University of Kansas. This best management practices for turf care and pollinator conservation. That document is about an 8-page document, and it is included as well in your handout section. So you can download that, and that is an excellent resource. That actually was not available. It was still being developed as we developed the BMP template. And so kind of hot off the press item there as it relates to pollinator protection. And so again, here is, within the BMP tool, we've got the regulatory considerations, we've got pollinator habitat protection, and so again, the best management practices that are there that relate to pollinators. Pesticide management, that's another key area that has oftentimes some regulation associated with it, but others not. This is an area that's really, as you can see from this article here, pollution exposures at golf courses. I find it interesting. This was January 30th, so really only about 2 months ago this article came out, and it talked about the level of exposure that you have as a golf course, with fuel tanks and pesticide storage facilities. And one of the things I find quite interesting is the fact that insurance companies are figuring this thing out too. And so this insurance agency here, golf course herbicide, pesticide, and pollution liability. And so you actually, if the insurance folks are getting concerned about this, then we ought to be concerned as practitioners in the field as well. And so one of the things I encourage folks, maybe you have a pesticide mixed load facility that is quite antiquated. And one of the things I have found is, especially at a lot of golf facilities, there's a number of lawyers that may be members, and one thing lawyers understand is liability. And so maybe part of this planning guide for this BMP is to really push forward the conversation. The fact that you need a new pesticide maintenance or pesticide storage facility and mixed load facility, really to minimize this liability concern that is out there. And again, it's my experience that lawyers understand liability, and when you get them in your court, members of your facility, and start pressing, we need a new facility because of limiting or mitigating some of our liability. In the pesticide management side of things, I think there's a number of principles that we can look at as well, and so there's all kinds of BMPs related to pesticide, environmental fate, and transport. I want to just show you a few things out there that I think you would find kind of interesting. I teach a series of pesticide selection BMPs, and I just want to focus really on two: pesticide with minimal impact on non-target species, and then we'll end out looking at the evaluation of pesticide and site characteristics affecting off-site movement of chemicals. And so, you're given an option of a number of pesticides to do your job. And I would contend that really when you select a pesticide to control a particular pest on your facility, that you look at all of these. Not just what does it cost or how effective is it, but really take into consideration all 5 of these particular categories. And I want to focus really right now on this pesticides with minimal impact on non-target species, and just give you an example of some concerns that we've had in Florida. And that's really is, do we base our pesticides on the impact that they may have on the beneficial and the threatened and endangered species? Because, we golf courses in green space offer prime opportunity for wildlife. And in fact, we tout that, these beneficials and threatened endangered species. And some states tend to have these inventories that are available out there. So folks have gone out and identified what critters are residing in the state. And so I show an example of this in Florida. This is the natural areas inventory. And there's this tracking list over here. And so if we click on this tracking list and we can do a search, then it would tell us, and I put in Collier County, Florida. So that's Naples, Florida. And these are all the critters that reside in Collier County, Florida. And I want to draw your attention to this one right here. This is the Florida scrub jay. And so that's a good thing. That's, this little blue bird that I'll show you in this picture here. And so here it's, it's a pretty bird, and we pride ourselves because on our golf course, we have documented that we have the Florida scrub jay, but we also keep good pesticide records, and we use a particular insecticide. And in this case, and I'm not singling out any particular pesticide, I'm just showing you an environmental hazard section on this particular pesticide. And this particular pesticide says, do not apply within 15 feet of bodies of fresh water, lakes, reservoirs, rivers, permanent streams, on and on and on. And it goes down here. Do not use this product within 500 feet of areas occupied by the threatened scrub jay, amongst these other critters. And so this is one of those areas where we need to be very, very careful, because we bring in school-age children or environmental folks, bird watchers, and they've documented that we have these particular wildlife living on our facility. But then we also have good documents showing where our pesticide application records. And it would behoove us to look at the environmental hazards to make sure that we're not finding ourselves in a catch-22 when we use a product that has some of these prohibitions. So those are just, that's one example of how we need to be very careful in how we document and what we document, because we can find ourselves, as I said, in this catch-22. Let's look at this second area, and we'll wrap up here for the day. And this is the evaluation of pesticide and site characteristics affecting off-site movement of chemicals. There's a really snazzy tool or website. This is Web Soils Survey, the nrcsusa.gov. There is actually a smartphone version of this, although about a week ago it stated that it needed to be updated for the new iOS. But anyway, this is a web soil survey, and you can do this from your computer, assuming it's GIS or the positional attributes of your computer set up, or again with your smartphone, and you can click on this Start This WSS, and I'll take us over here to Mississippi, golf course that I was kind of looking at, and what we see here is this golf course right here, the preserve. And so you click on this, and you can see here, we've got all kinds, we have the address, the state and the county, soil survey area of their interest. And so we'll zoom in on this a little bit, and here is, this is the preserve golf club, and what you see here is all the various properties of the soils and that are going on, and well, we can click a little bit more and And here we see we've lit up what are the soil types that are in place on this golf course. Now, this was the soil that was there before the bulldozers ever showed up, and realized bulldozers are going to move some dirt around, and they're going to expose some water, and we call that lakes. But nonetheless, you see these various soil types, and it's kind of hard to see on this, but these are little numbers there, and these numbers relate to the map unit symbol, 26, 28, 29. And so this is going to tell you what that native soil is at the golf course. Again, be reminded that this is before the bulldozer showed up. And so if we were to click on one of these soil types, this is in Jackson County, Mississippi, on this golf course, we can scroll down here. Here we see slope 0 to 1%, so it's pretty flat. Natural drainage class, notice it says poorly drained. Runoff class, very high. And depth to water table is an important number. And it says here it is about 0 to 12 inches. And I think it's important for you to take and use some of these types of tools to go figure out what you have out there because of this. So here's another example, and I just pulled an example. So this is Monument 75 herbicide, an excellent product, for controlling broadleaf sedge and grass weeds. And all pesticide labels are going to have, that environmental hazard sections. But notice here, we have a groundwater advisory on this particular product. It says this chemical has properties and characteristics associated with chemicals detected in groundwater. The use of this chemical in areas where the water table is shallow may result in groundwater contamination. Now, does that mean that we should not use Monument on that particular facility? Well, absolutely not. What that does mean is that if we are, maybe, for example, in Pensacola, Florida last year, in the month of June, we had 24 inches of rain in the month of June. And so that water table was extremely high in our facilities around here. And so would I discourage the use of a particular herbicide if you're having 24 inches of water with the groundwater advisory? Absolutely. And so those are the types of things that I think we have to take into consideration as we roll out BMPs. And again, it's putting that information that's already there. Every pesticide label you have is going to have these particular sections. But it really comes down to connecting the dots. And I really think that from the BMP perspective, from the BMP perspective, it really comes down to planning. We go back to that quote, failing to plan is planning to fail. And so we have all this information out there at our fingertips. And now through this GCSAA BMP tool, we have the ability to create guiding documents that help us do what we do and do it better. And setting those goals and getting some direction and identifying maybe those problems that are there. We mentioned that that pesticide mixed load facility. Maybe it's not the best. Maybe in fact it's quite hazardous. And so those problems then can be then turned into goals. We need to replace that. And so we bring all this kind of to a close here this afternoon from the BMP perspective. Again, we have all this information. We now have the ability through this web portal to develop a very site-specific best management plan so that we can manage golf courses in the most responsible way possible. And with that, I'll ask if there are any questions.
Thanks, Bryan. Lots of great information there today. I just want to interject a couple things if you want to type in a question or raise your hand. There are webinars that Bryan has mentioned that we've done in the past, and you can access those from the GCSA website. Most of them are in the Learning Hub. They're also available from the BMP page where he goes into demonstration of different aspects of the tool, so you can get started with those kinds of things. I will also mention that we have upcoming webinars, quite a few this month as we move forward. Lee Miller and Carrie Brujdoff next week. And then if you speak Spanish or have Spanish workers or know anyone who might be interested in doing an in-language webinar on the 18th, I will not be moderating. Everything's going to be in Spanish, so we're kind of excited about that. I'm not seeing any questions here, Bryan.
I must have wore them all out.
Well, you know, a lot of information. One of the things that I think this webinar makes you want to do is get into that portal and see how it works and access it. So I know people are interested in doing that. I appreciate you teaching this for us today and providing lots of great information. I don't know that anybody is going to have other questions. Education points are available, and I will process those for you as part of the contact report. And then you'll be able to, we'll give you access to this recording, and then in the Learning Hub, you'll have access to the handouts. So if you didn't get a chance to download those today, which you could do now, you can do that. And if you're interested in teaching for us, March 30th is that deadline. Here's where you can find the form online. Fill that out. We need new ideas. Bryan's going to teach again at GIS, right, Bryan?
I think that's the plan. We'll see how it all shakes out.
San Diego's always a great venue. We look forward to seeing you all there. We look forward to seeing you online again with these webinars. Bryan, did you have any other closing remarks for us today?
No, I appreciate the fact that you are here and taking this serious. It's exciting. It's just really to see this, really come to fruition. I'm really excited as we head into We Are Golf in Washington here in the latter part of April, to really be talking about just how proactive the industry has been in embracing this. And so, again, take that, if you're really wanting to get into this thing, at the facility level, jump in there, work with your states to, really speed up the process of getting the state document in place. It is a mound of work. It's a Herculean job, really, to do this. The cool thing is that the web tool has really taken a lot of that work and kind of cut it down into bite-sized pieces. And so encourage you all to really jump in, help at the state level. That way you can have access and get into the facility level.
Right, get that state level step done first and then go on to your facility, save time and make sure things are in order. Well, thank you again. Thank you all for participating. Bryan, his email address is there if you have questions later as you proceed. We thank you all for joining us, and we'll see you online again soon. Have a great day.